Well, hello and welcome back. Thank you very much for tuning in to this Times Networks event. In fact, we have a very interesting discussion coming up ahead for you, and we will be discussing on maximizing the value of your data. Of course, organizations are trying to find ways to use data to increase operational efficiencies and analyze and blend data to enhance customer experiences as well. However, data digitization does come with its sets of challenges as well, which includes data protection as well as data privacy. So, we will be talking about all of that in about the next 40 odd minutes. Our esteemed set of panelists also today joining in. We have Mr. Jitesh PV, the VP and Head Digital Center of Excellence at DCE Federal Bank, Mr. Prabhakar Venugopal, Regional Director West at Hitachi Vantara India Private Limited, Mr. Akhilesh Tuteja of KPMG, as well as Mr. Sankar Narayanan Raghavan, the CTO of India First Life Insurance Company. Gentlemen, appreciate you all taking your time out and speaking with us today at this event of the Times Network. But Mr. Prabhakar, if I can first come to you, this is of course a huge opportunity that lies ahead. Of one point of time, we were talking about how data is going to become the new oil, and well, yes, it has become one. So, talk to us about the kind of opportunities that we're really looking at in this space, and of course, the challenges that come along with it.
Great, Ruchi. Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me here in this esteemed forum. Yeah, well said. This is an oft-repeated saying, right? Data is the new oil. Let me take a couple of minutes to provide the context here. Financial institutions are today facing a lot of challenges. Not to undermine the pandemic challenge, but we also have, things related to fraud detection, or things related to cybersecurity, or related to compliance and regulation. They are grappling with many things. And to handle that, technology has also come up. It has come up with robotics, it has come up with in RPA, cloud, and AI and ML. So what has happened is with this technology, which are innovative, which are coming in, data has started growing. Initially, data for the institutions were coming only from the data center, mainly from the core banking or from their enterprise applications. But now it is coming from the edge, it is coming from the cloud, and also from the core. So much of data, and people had to manage this data to get meaningful outputs. And that is the biggest challenge today. The way the data is growing is the big challenge. And to keep the data at the right place, protect it, and use it for the advantage of their business is a big challenge that the IT leaders are now trying to solve. And that gives a great opportunity for companies which are leading this to differentiate them and to be competitive.
Well, absolutely. Let me get in a word by Mr. Jitesh as well. We're seeing, especially for the banking system, at one point of time we were talking about people walking into the different branches, but banking per se no longer is going to be people walking into the branches. We will see more and more people getting onto digital banking. This is something that the RBI is promoting as well. How is the banking system looking to now digitize itself, the financial sector looking to digitize itself? And talk to us about your experience there at Federal Bank as well.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone, to all my panelists and Ruchi. Thank you for putting us in the show. So basically, see, the digitalization or the digitization that particular era actually started around in 2015-16 when banks started to maybe there is, as you know, the post demonetization, there is a lot of demand for digital and people started coming into various digital platforms. So in the last 3 years, what we have seen is that from actually a migration to a banks are actually moved into from a migration point of view to a digital transformation. Today, as far as Federal Bank is concerned, from 2016, when we are doing 40% of our transaction through digital, today we are doing 86.5% of transaction through digital. So this is a major change that has happened as far as digital transformation of the bank is concerned. So that is number one. Number two, mobile is the major channel. As you all know, today there are more than 1 billion mobile phones in the market, and 70% of the transactions are happening through digital channels. So this is one of the major things that has happened. And of course, all the services now today, all the services are getting integrated into mobile channels. Customers can carry their phone as a bank in their pocket. So whatever you want to do, make a payment or block your debit card, or maybe switch it on or switch it off before going to the ATM. All those things are possible through digital channels. So the digital transformation has actually happened in the industry. Now we are looking at how to maximize the customer experience, or the from a user experience perspective. That era of digitalization or migration is gone. Now we are looking at providing more and more convenient features to the customer, how analytics can help customers to banks to get hyper personal experience in the digital channel. So for example, if Rujika comes into the platform, you will see a different screen altogether. While Jidesh comes in, there will be an entirely different screen. So this is the way data analytics is going to happen in the banking industry, and hyper personalization is going to be one of the key elements in banking industry.
It's going to be an era of personalization along with digitization. If Mr. Akhilesh, if you can come in on that, as we're seeing, the entire banking system, and not just the banking system, various industries looking at digital transformation to increase operational efficiencies, customer experience, and of course, use of data analytics as well. Talk to us about, from the risk perspective, what are some of the things that businesses are, of course, watching out for, because we are in the era of digitization. We're in the era of increased number of risks associated with the digital platforms as well. From the risk side, I want to understand from you, what is it that the businesses need to look at?
Thanks, Ruchi, for providing this wonderful context to start with the power of data and digitalization and what risk kind of it presents. I do want to come and say that first, whatever those risks are, don't get scared, because the benefits far outweigh. A digital transformation can really change the game of business, make it very profitable, make it very relevant for the clients. Yes, of course, in anything when there are gains, there are going to be risks. So an effective management of those risks is important. I would touch upon the following key risks which must be managed in advance. Some of my previous panelists talk about the risk of security and privacy. I think that is important. The more and more data you produce, the more you transmit the data electronically and digitally, there is a risk that they could be misused, they could be hacked, they could be intercepted, and of course sometimes somebody could impersonate and misuse your bank account and your data. So I think there's a classical risk around cybersecurity and privacy and misuse of the data exist. The second big risk, which actually is less talked about, and in my view the businesses must worry the more about, is the risk of bad or poison data. More and more organizations are actually going to make decisions based on data. So imagine, and I always say that technology has displaced many jobs. It used to displace some manual jobs in the past, but the job which is technology going to displace the most in tomorrow's time is that of an astrologer. We are no longer going to ask an astrologer as to what the business is going to look like. It is going to be technology. It is said that a majority of the decisions are already made based on data, and in the future they will be made primarily on data. Imagine you're making a big strategic business decision and the data which you're using is wrong. Imagine that your competitor had the ability to poison wrong data. They are not here to steal your data. They are not here to stop your data. They're actually going to give you bad data. And that bad data could make you wrong decisions. So the entire thing about, and I call it, how do you create trust in the data? So creating trust in the data is going to be one of the most.
That's a very, very valid point, and let me get the other speakers as well on that. Mr. Shankar Narayan, if you can come in on that. You did hear the previous panelists saying that the benefits outweigh the kind of risks that are there. However, we need to build trust in data. I want to understand from you, from the technological side, how do you build trust, because that's $1 million question at the end of the day.
Thanks, Ruchi, for having me, and the question as well. It's a wonderful question. I think it has come to me at the right time, because insurance is completely based on trust, correct? So we underwrite risk based on what is given by the proposer. And Akhilesh mentioned about good data, bad data, how we are going to segregate good and bad data, what is that we are going to do. So for me, the trust is like being in insurance. I think what I need to have is that I need to keep them really, really informed. I need to keep them engaged. how I am going to do that, what are the things, what I'm going to do, what matters the most, correct? So right from the time somebody gives me some money along with a piece of paper, correct? I'm just using a piece of paper because that's the data what they are filling in, and either digitally or by means of a proposal form that comes to me, correct? And they give me some money, correct? So from the time the trust starts, so they trust me, thinking that okay, my life is going to get protected here. So I have to make sure that the data, whatever they are giving, is properly used for my underwriting. When I say underwriting the risk, whatever I have to cover, and also make sure that I keep them informed about why I am taking this, what I am taking this. And it's insurance being a long-term contract, I need to keep them engaged. And I need to make sure that all the data, whatever is at as a point, every point of time, I also need to enrich it. And I also make sure that I also give them a personalized input back to them, because the needs change with the time, correct? So I can't have one kind of product which is given to them at a point of time, which is going to be the same throughout their life. There are various needs which comes in. So I need to use the data what I have, and I need to enrich the data with what I don't have or what I changed at the time. And I make sure that I engage with them. I give them various inputs on how their data is growing with me, how their data is secure with me, and those kinds of things is very important in insurance. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, let me get a view from Mr. Jitesh as well. You also spoke about that there can't be a one-size-fit-all approach, and this is something that we're seeing in the banking sector as well. This is something that Mr. Raghavan also spoke about. I just want to understand from you, at a time when there are, of course, varied products that you're looking at in terms of data, depending on what the end consumer wants, then how do you build trust? Because this is of course going to be very, very paramount. Even we have government regulations, the government is looking into this issue very, very closely as well. So I want to understand from you, from the banking sector, from the insurance sector's perspective, how do you build trust when you have varied products focused on a particular need of a consumer?
Yeah, basically, banking industry is a highly regulated entity. All the banks are highly regulated, and all the data protection laws, even though GDPR is not applicable in India, banks, of course, give a lot of to the customers. The primary thing is the encryption, or the way we store the data. So we ensure that we encrypt the data inside the organization, and we have data privacy levels, data security levels, different levels of data privacy and data security are being implemented. What level people should access, what type of data should be accessed by what level of people. All those things are defined inside the organization, and this is basically being monitored by a set of people. We have implemented all controls like data leakage policy, etc., so that the data from the bank should not go to the external world. Number one. Number two, as far as a customer is concerned, whatever data customer is sharing with the bank, it should be confidential. So ensuring that the customers are understanding the fact that their data is safe with the bank is the most important thing that bank is doing, and including mobile banking, or whenever a customer takes mobile banking, what privacy or what security that is being offered to the customer is very critical. So for example, today, whenever a mobile banking is being used by a Federal Bank's customer, we have an inbuilt security mechanism which do not allow the customer to install in devices where there are remote access tools. So, and also where there are malwares, etc. So this is to protect the customer from any type of attack that can happen even from the mobile device. So we are even taking care of the minutest aspect of customer data protection, which of course customer understands by way of looking at the application and saying that we are having a zero fraud application. So which is of course a testimony for banks trust, whatever trust for the data that is being created by the bank for its customer. One is encryption, one is the various network level securities that we have been implementing, and what we communicate to the customer,
Right.
and of course sharing of the data, not sharing of the data with any third-party service providers, using it within the bank for various purposes. These are some of the things which bank is doing, and pretty highly regulated by the regulators in the country. So that way, banking is giving a lot of trust to its customers.
Right. Oh, absolutely. In fact, on that note, let's also take the first poll question as well for all of you watching our show on the Times Network. Do put in your answers for the first poll question. Will the digitization in the banking sector lead to loss of jobs? Yes or no? Please keep giving in your answers. But on that note, let me also get in a word from Mr. Jitesh as well. Jitesh, if I can understand from you, if you look at the entire financial sector, while we're talking about protecting data in a big way and the financial sector being a highly regulated sector, despite that we're seeing fintech and of course digitization that have really emerged as the key growth drivers for the sector going forward. There is a policy of the government on one hand, and of course the RBI also that is looking to do the balancing act. At a time like this, what do you think is the need of the hour to ensure that trust is sustained at a larger scale, and also what needs to be done to minimize the risks?
Yeah, there are certain standards a bank has to meet whenever we launch an application or whenever we share to a customer. We have to ensure that okay, X, Y, Z controls are there. There are set of policies inside the organization, and the information security policy. There are certain controls are mandated by the regulator. So whenever we work with fintech, of course, the question on fintech is very valid here today because most of the BFSI partners cannot survive on their own in today's world because fintech
Mhm.
brings a lot of innovation, a lot of new thought process into the market, and they also embrace new technologies. For example, blockchain or any new
Right,
technology. If you look at fintechs, are always there to innovate. So there is a lot of innovation that is there with the fintech. So always partnering with the fintech is the need of the hour, and entire
right.
our Reserve Bank of India and entire economy is actually looking at such partnerships. So we are also leading two major partnerships as far as neobanks are concerned, and we have at least more than 100 partners working with the bank. But what
Right.
we do with the fintechs is that we ensure that they comply with whatever security requirements are required for the bank. So whatever security is mandated for the bank by the regulator, the same level of security is mandated for every fintech. So we do
Hmm.
due diligence of the fintech, we do IS audit, and they are also subject to VA vulnerability assessments and penetration testing of their application. And whatever changes are required, or whenever they make a changes, they are also supposed to go through the entire what you call set of compliances that is required. So we do check off all these items, and only when our systems of fintech move a product. So we work with the fintech, we train them because most of the fintechs are not ready for this or they are not aware of all these things because they are actually an innovator. But when we work with the bank,
Right.
we actually co-work with them and
On
we
that
tell them,
note,
yeah.
I have to ask Mr. Akhilesh also on that. Mr. Akhilesh, while we're talking about, the risks and how financial sector can look at mitigating the risks, I have to ask you about and put the spotlight on Citibank's almost $900 million mess that recently took place. And just in context of that, how does the banking system make sure, the financial system makes sure that you have safe app hosting, leak-proof data storage, you have enough firewalls as well, and ensure that such kind of a situation does not really occur.
So, as the colleague before me talked about on this subject, and they kind of talked about very highly about their zero fraud app. I admire their confidence. I think it's important, but I think it's very important to realize that the banking system by design is a lucrative system, and there are going to be people who have incentive and motivation to try and defraud the system. And this is, I think, a way of and a risk of doing business. I think what we need to do is that we need to put controls in place to make sure that those things don't occur. But at the same time, I would also tell you that risk management is not about getting a foolproof security. It is also not creating system which can never be hacked, because if you try to do that, possibly you will never make money. As much of a risk management professional I am, I do want to say it is a balance between the business risk and the protection which you want to provide. So, with that context, I would say that there is an important responsibility for all of us in today's world to balance the quality of risk which we deal with and what the kind of controls which we apply. In my view, there is a disproportionately high risk which exists because of digital channels. And the reasons for that being that digital channels take away the fundamental premise of who can access from where. So the controls need to go
Hmm.
at much more deep and a much more layered level compared to in a non-digitized world. So that's the first principle. The second is the speed with which the expectation of the customers these days are changing. It is making a tremendous pressure on the people who build those systems and those who operate those systems. Just to give you an idea, only about 5 years ago, a bank would replace its system maybe once in 6 to 7 years. In today's time, a bank has to upgrade their mobile banking app from 55 to 60
Hmm.
days. In the past, a bank had to
True.
upgrade its system on one platform. Today, a bank had to upgrade their mobile banking app, not one, not two, not three, on 10 platforms, because you will have to support three or four
Right.
Android, two or three Android. So imagine the
Absolutely.
amount of pressure it has put on the people who build, operate, and run those systems. So there is a huge
True.
risk which we need to deal with. And therefore, I think the idea, the concept of a risk manager is not to protect every possible thing. I'm not suggesting that we don't protect the key things, but I think it's important to find
Absolutely.
that right balance on what we do. So that's on the system side. I think the bigger risk which we all run, which we sometimes don't recognize, is the people risk. In today's world, if you look at majority of the fraud, and I really mean by majority of the frauds, they don't happen because there was just a system weakness. I think those happen because there was also a human weakness, and that human weakness is
Hmm.
far higher to far stronger and far difficult to control. If it is only left to technology, I can
True.
fix it once and it'll remain there forever. But if I've got hundreds and millions of people operating that system, making sure that all of them behave in the right manner. So the people parts out of the control, in my view, the organization need to spend more time and energy on.
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Prabhakar, if you can come in on that, let's also talk about whether the financial institutions have enough and requisite skill sets to adapt to the new technologies. There you had the previous speaker talking about how the banking. We're seeing banks having to upgrade their apps every now and then in less than a period of 2 months. So, talk to us about how big a challenge is it, and do you think the financial system per se is they have enough requisite skill sets to adapt to the newer technologies that are coming in every single day?
Yeah, that's a very good point that Akhilesh has brought in, because while most of the technologies that's happening are digital, most of the workforce that we have are all trained on analog technology. So it is a transformation that is happening not only at the system level but also at the people level. I would say, the technology is trying to help here in two ways. First one is from the development cycle. It's a very common phrase is something called as the DevOps, which is previously people used to develop an application, test it out, and then put it into the market. And the development phase could take maybe 2 years, 3 years, and then this application would hit the market. But today, that's not a possibility. As Akhilesh mentioned, every 6 months we need version changes. Every 6 months we need features to be added. Every 6 months you need to address a new market. So DevOps is trying to address this challenge for the customer. That's one. Number two, from a people perspective, once upon a time, close to 70 to 80% of the people's time were spent in doing rudimentary tasks, trying to do back office work, trying to do things which can be done by applications. So today, AI and ML has come into the AI. Automation is trying to get as much out of the people a bit as possible. And that is the second thing that is helping people. We are trying to provide bandwidth to the people as much as possible so that they can use this for their business advantage rather than doing things which can be handled by technology. RPA is something which is robotic process automation is becoming very mature as we talk. So all of this in the banking industry is today a reality. Whatever I am talking is not futuristic. These are all happening in Indian banks today. I hope it answered the question, Ruchi.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Mr. Raghavan, if I can, come in on that. And before that, let me also take the second poll question as well. Does financial institutions have enough requisite skill sets to adapt to the new technologies? Keep giving in your answers, yes or no. But Mr. Raghavan, I just wanted to understand from you, while we're discussing about the financial sector at large, how are financial institutions leveraging automation in their operations? Because going forward, it's all going to be about blockchain technologies. It's all going to be about how we can process the payments faster, more accurately, reduce the transactional cost as well for the banking system at large.
So I think a lot of inputs have been shared on various aspects, correct? So one is automation, why everyone expects everything to happen very fast, correct? So that's the kind of, and because being digital, we expect everything to happen very, very quickly. So when it comes to, for example, for me, the important aspect is, Akhilesh talked about fraud on cyber side. For me, the fraud is also from a perspective of somebody gives me some wrong data. So I'm just will underwrite it, and then maybe I may have to, for example, somebody who is having some sort of a sickness, he may go for a coverage, and within few days, if he dies, I may have to pay. That's something which is incorrect, correct? I am just going to pay a little large money. So from that perspective, I need to underwrite it properly. So I have to use, for example, even we are using a video KYC and other things where I have to use a facial recognition to see that, okay, what is the age it's going to be, whether that is something which is misstated. Is there any other data what I can use? Maybe a credit bureau data what I can use to underwrite? Is there any other data which I can use from distributed databases or blockchain which I can use to understand? Is there any fraud related to the person whom I have sourced? So I think it's not only, and all these things has to happen very quickly. So I can't just like that send a note to someone else and then ask for some data to come in next day and then underwrite it, correct? So it has to happen at a flip of a second. So how can I do it, correct? So, and the data has to be really correct as well, correct? If I'm going to say something and I'm going to say a wrong input to someone and take a decision, I'm going to lose the business, correct? It's going to be a seepage. So I have to take the right decision. I have to take quickly, and I have to make sure that it happens, which is beneficial to the customer as well as us. So automation is very, very important, and so is analytics, so is AML. So all these things, I think it's not like those days wherein somebody walks into your branch, somebody knows based on the trust, okay, I know him, you know me, and then you do it. Now everything is a faceless. I'm just doing based on somebody's coming to my site and then buying it, or an app and then buying something. I need to understand them using the data and also do it very quickly. So automation is a must, and also I'm talking to various distributors. Performance and quickness is also must, and also I have to make sure that all those integration points, and I have the right risk management framework. I also do the right testing at right times, and also fix those problems. So I think a lot of work has to happen to make this happen. It's not a single stuff I can just go and do it. So you have to deploy DevOps. You have to have a AML. You have to have facial recognition. You have to have proper BAPD done. You have to have a process automation done. So for you to give a good customer experience, correct, and also to make sure that your business risks are managed within your risk management framework. So I think we have to see it in totality.
Right. Mr. Akhilesh, if you know, I can get your views on the same subject. While we're talking about advanced technologies like AI, blockchain, RPA, that will really drive transformations in the, in various sectors in the days to come, as we're talking about more digitization. What do you think is the need of the hour to really elevate the entire experience for the consumer? Because at the end of the day, it's all going to be about customer experiences.
I think this is a brilliant point you made, because many times we tend to focus on technology way more and focus very little on the use it brings and the customer experience it can provide. So I would say the progressive organizations have turned the tide. They say, I really don't care what the technology is. I got to start with the customer first. And this concept of customer journey mapping and debottlenecking the customer experience, creating a seamless experience, is the way to start. And then you use technology as it is deemed necessary. So there are many examples of wrong technology being applied for the sake of technology, but I think those are not the progressive organization. But there are many who actually start with the customer. There's some, maybe if I were to share a couple of good practices around here, it's important to also figure out that what kind of areas one should experiment with the cutting edge technology, and what kind of areas where you'll use time tested technology. There are many areas where the customer is okay to just sacrifice anything for the sake of experience, for the sake of convenience, and all that. There are other areas like security, accuracy, and those areas I have zero tolerance.
Absolutely.
So you can't be choosing a cutting edge technology. It's like saying, if you're going to build a car, you can maybe experiment a little bit with an audio system, but you can't experiment with your transmission system. So that's first design principle, to say where you experiment and where you stick to the time tested core. The second one is that, do you have the ability to take the transformation of the technology to the next level of creating seamlessness. There have been many bad examples where one great technology has been applied in one part of the customer journey, and then it lands up into a very bad situation the next point. The classic example I give of the flyovers in Mumbai, they've kind of created some debottlenecking. As long as you're on the flyover, then 30 seconds down, your bottleneck is maybe 4x of what it was. So it actually doesn't give you, technology gives you great customer experience, but for a millisecond, and then it kind of breaks you down further and as you come down the flyover. That's the second big learning which you're seeing. And then the third one, also a lot of technologies which I call the solution looking for a problem. And this is my personal view, not that of KPMG, but I do think that in many cases the blockchain as a technology has been applied as a solution to a problem which we haven't yet found a good one. I think blockchain is a great technology. It can solve a lot of problem where you need to create intermediation, where you need to create trust in an intermediary, etc. But one thing which people generally don't consider is that blockchain is particularly not the most efficient technology when it comes to speed, because it works on the consensus mechanism and many other things. So I think those are my three suggestions to people when they look at, and I truly agree that customer must be at the center of our universe.
Let me ask Prabhakar also that. Prabhakar, how important is it to keep the customer at the center of, whatever solutions that we're looking to find, this even as we want to experiment more on technology and get the most efficient technology going for the respective businesses?
Yeah, that's very, very pertinent, Ruchi. The regulator expects the financial institution to protect the data. So today I've seen a lot of banks, a lot of stock exchanges. They today deploy technologies. We also provide the technology, which today gives 100% data availability to the customer, zero data loss protection to all the data, which means no data in a bank or a stock exchange would ever get lost. Now, what has happened is the same regulator has also mentioned important data need to be maintained for X number of years. It could be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. So these banks have now started accumulating this data. And now, as Akhilesh mentioned, how can I use this data to serve my customer? That's an important thing. So there are various stages that the data flows through. Initially, we store the data, protect this. That's a stage one. Then we need to enrich this data so that the data can be made meaningful for providing insights for their application. And then they try to monetize this data, and then that leads to the customer experience. Now, this is a journey. Today, there are technologies that are available. Some of the leaders in India use this technology to serve these customers, and they are growing their market share using that. So that is what is important. Just accumulating data, protecting data alone is not sufficient today. That is the base level, and from there, can we move up? Is the question. And the leaders are doing it today, so which is very encouraging. And if I can take a minute of digression only on the technology side, in one of the social media, while AI is used for purging unnecessary channels from the social media, I'm sure many of you would have read. One of the site has been taken down. One of the channel has been taken down for 24 hours. And when the owner tried to check out why his channel was taken down, that owner is a chess channel. And the channel was taken down because the bot has heard words like black, white, and threat. So he thought it is something which is a racist site, but it is a site which is explaining a chess game. So technology need to be used in the right way. But we are growing, and we will reach there.
Absolutely. On that note, here's a third poll question as well. Does India need more stringent data privacy laws for its people? So I'm going to give really the last word to Akhilesh. Akhilesh, quickly, we're really running out of time. So I want to ask you one last final question. The role and importance of data privacy laws. As we're talking about digitization, how important will it be to also protect people's privacy at the end of the day?
Absolutely essential. I think the role of data privacy principles, data privacy regulator, participants of the market, and the consumer themselves is very important to protect privacy. What I would like to say, I know I'm going to be brief because this is the last word. Privacy has many implications, and it is also not just a societal but also a nation state and political matter. So
Oh,
it is important that
absolutely.
draw the right kind of principles and right kind of boundaries. Ultimate objective is to protect the individual investors, banking customers, and all of that. And therefore, sometimes there is a big trade-off of privacy with convenience, because some users may seek more convenience at the loss of privacy. So giving control in the hands of user along with the right kind of education. It's not somebody just getting the control and not knowing how to misuse or use it is one part. And then the second is trying to balance the aspect of privacy and
Right.
security together. So those would be my 2 points.
Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you. But on that note, Jitesh, Mr. Prabhakar, Mr. Akhilesh, as well as Mr. Shankar Narayan, appreciate you all taking your time out and speaking with us today on this very invigorating subject. With that, it's a wrap from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.